let me see, 162, 163, 164, 165? We're done? You're kidding! No. It's not that I'm anxious to stop working together. Don't think that, please. Just, I could use a break. You probably could too. Hey, if in all honesty, with an honest effort, you've gotten to the end of this course, 165 days of lessons together, congratulations. Congratulations for your endurance. I hope you can see how it's really paid off. In fact, lesson 3.14 should have showed you just how much it is hopefully paid off. Because that lesson focused on all three of the skills that we've learned this year. You had to listen and understand. You had to be able to speak and express yourself. And you had to be able to read and understand what was expected of you in the question in lesson 3.14. There remains just one more skill, isn't there? It's a skill of reading, and I'll get to that in just a second. But congratulations. And really, most importantly, I talk about speaking and listening and reading, but the most important skill, I think, that you could have learned in the course of this year, which opens up doors to you for the future, which gives you the greatest potential for growth in this new language, is the thought process. Have you learned to think as thinks a native speaker of the language that you're learning? That's the goal of the ULET ultimately. Because the ability to learn to speak a language, you'll learn the foundation, the basic elements here in the ULET program. But to become fluent in a language, that'll require constant exposure to native speakers of the language that you're learning. Maybe here in the States, if that's where you're located currently, but far more likely in some other country, as I spent 13 years with my family living in France, and that made all the difference for me. And so the key is, do you have the right thought process in place? If I've given you the wrong thought process by using the wrong approach to language teaching, I have deeply or profoundly handicapped you as far as your long-term learning in this language. But I'm pretty confident that I have not, because that's exactly what I'm aiming not to do. How will you know if you're thinking in the right fashion? Well, before you speak, before you give me your daily routine, for example, do you have to first think in English and say, okay, I wake up at 5 o'clock. How do I say I? How do I say wake up? And do I translate the up? If you're not doing that, you're on the right track. Secondly, before you speak, are you seeing words in printed form in your head and then trying to say them after you've translated them to the language that you're trying to speak? If you're not seeing printed words in your head, if you're not thinking first in English and then trying to speak the language, we've been successful. And that's been the goal, to give you the right thought process. Now, what lies ahead? For the second year course, you can find all the specifics regarding what is covered in the second year by going to the contents section of the website, and right between lessons 3.14 and 3.15, where the two courses break, first year and second year, you'll see there's a link to the second year course description, and there you can see all the specifics of what will be dealt with in the second year. But I'll just mention the most important. The biggest change is going to be, we're going to start with that fourth skill, and that is the ability to write the language. In very simple fashion initially, I'll have you writing the same kinds of statements that you can already very naturally produce in spoken form. And so you already have the vocabulary you need, you know the structures as well. Writing essays, for example, that'll come in the third year. But we're just going to begin with writing the kinds of things that you can already say at this point. We'll also expose you to some more challenging and more frequent readings in the second year program. And maybe the biggest change structurally is that you're going to be exposed to a wide variety of verb tenses, far more than you have now. Currently, you can speak in the present simple tense. I speak English. You can speak in the present progressive. I am speaking English. And you can speak in the near future. I am going to speak English. However, you can't at this point talk about things that have already happened in the past. You can't talk about things in the more distant future. You can't talk about hypothetical situations like, if I were you, I would speak in this. And so the second year is going to expose you to a great number of verb tenses. And beyond those considerations for the second year, the things that we'll be covering, what is your greatest need before we get back together again for a second year course? Well, the greatest need that you have is to maintain. With all that you've learned, all the skills that you've acquired in the course of the second year, or this first year, you don't want to lose them or have them grow rusty before a second year begins. Now, how's that going to take place? Well, the best thing you can do, of course, is travel. Travel to a country where the language that you've learned is the native language. Even if it's just for a brief period of time, maybe you want to become far more fluent in a brief period of time, but you become far more motivated when you see that this is a real live language that people speak and that I need if I want to function in this world. You can also locally come in contact with native speakers of the language you've learned. For example, in my case, I spent a couple of years attending a Hispanic church not far from our home. And in so doing, picked up a lot of vocabulary, became much more at ease with the language spoken by native speakers at a conversational rate. And so local native speakers of the language you're learning, you can find a way to come in contact with them. Thirdly, maybe online you can find people who are trying to learn English and who would help you in return develop greater fluency in their language. And then finally, you may remember me talking about when I was in college and I had no one to speak Spanish with as I was learning it. And I would walk around campus describing what was going on, describing the scene before me, or maybe thinking about, okay, this is what I'm going to have to do when I get back to the dorm, or this is what I did last night. And so talking to yourself as discreetly as you can so people don't think you're crazy, but talking to yourself is another way to maintain what you've already learned. You could talk to yourself about, describe yourself, describe another person, describe what they look like, how they're feeling, what they're wearing, what their general state of health seems to be, what they're doing at this moment. You can talk about your daily routine. You can, just like I mentioned, talk about things that you are going to do in the near future. Now, when I was just before my senior year, the summer before my senior year, between junior and senior year, my father encouraged me to go to France as an exchange student because he saw that I really wanted to speak this language better. And so I went for 10 weeks to a small village in the north of France and lived with a wonderful family named Dupré. And the Dupré didn't use much English, although a couple of the family members could speak some English. They didn't use much English with me at all, so I heard French essentially all summer long. Had a wonderful time with them, and when I came back at the end of the summer, just before school was to begin my senior year back here in the States, I found I was thinking in French still as a result of all the exposure I had to the French language while I was with them. So on the first day of class, Mr. Mead, our French teacher, with a strong German accent, he asked us to talk to our classmates about the things that we had done over the course of that summer. And most of my classmates said single word responses like j'ai joué au baseball, or je suis allé à la plage. I played baseball. I went to the beach. But I couldn't wait for it to be my turn. When it got to be my turn, I took off running. I told them about the family I lived with, the family members, who they were, playing cards with a little girl in the family every day, playing basketball in this village not too far away every day with some kids at the sports center, traveling down to the Mediterranean. I went on. And after 3 or 4 minutes, the girl in front of me turned around and she said, "Shut up." Now, that wasn't real polite, but frankly, she was right. I was showing off. I can't really blame her. And I was showing off because I had faced a challenge. It had been tough, but I had acquired so much information, so much knowledge, and I'd become so much more fluent in the language. I was proud of what I'd accomplished. And you should be proud also. If you've stuck with this program all the way through 165 days, you should be proud, especially as you think of lesson 3.14 and the things you just did. How much growth has happened since day 0 and day 165. Hopefully you're very satisfied with what you've learned, and you have good reason to be proud. And so, as opposed to what my classmate told me, I'll find a more polite way to say it, but to say the opposite. I'm going to say, don't stop talking. Over the course of the weeks or the months before you begin your second year course, don't stop talking. Find a way to maintain and to continue to become increasingly at ease with using this language out loud that you've been learning with me over the course of this past year. Well, before the course comes to an end, I think there's one person who might want to have something to say to you. I'd like to say goodbye, I would think. Michael? Michael, would you like to say goodbye to the students on the last day of class?
Sorry, Steve. Too busy. Too busy helping my wife. Gotta go make the bed. Gonna wash the dishes, wash the laundry, clean the floor.
Well, I'm glad to see that someone else apparently benefited from this course together. He seems to be turning over a new leaf. Well, in any case, I'll say goodbye for Michael and me. Adios, au revoir, auf Wiedersehen, ciao, goodbye, sayonara,